This is awesome. We have a great turnout, and there's a good mix of people on here, and agents and people that are fairly new, people that are very experienced and seasoned. What's nice about this, we actually talked about it in our team meeting this morning, is no matter where you're at in your business, I don't think we have ever seen multiple offers at Lake of the Ozarks like we're seeing them today. So I think the power of sharing ideas and breaking down what's working and what's not working is awesome for all of us to do. So we want this to be very interactive. We tried to break it up. There's no boilerplate for us, no template on this. So we tried to make it ourselves and just cover what we've seen. But don't hesitate to ask any questions or throw anything out that you might have questions on or want to talk about. So before we get into multiple offers and how to handle multiple offers, can we all agree that we love multiple offers? If you're representing a seller, it's a good place to be. So if we start with our sellers in mind, the question is, how can we encourage them? And we've had a couple conversations about this with different, Lois is on here. Ron and Lois had a great message a couple weeks ago. I talked to Ron quite a bit about how they used to encourage, or encourage multiple offers on their listings. And you want to expand on that, Jason, at all?
Well, sure. I mean, there's a couple different ways to do it. Obviously, instead of pricing extremely high, not being able to justify it, you still price it at a level that it may be on the high end, but it's not in the realm of ridiculousness. And we're seeing multiple offers on those. But the way that you do it, or, first it comes down to pricing, but then second of all, what Ron and Lois often do is they won't accept offers until, say, it goes on the market on Friday. They're not going to look at offers until noon on Monday. So they give a deadline. They give themselves some time to accumulate showings, to accumulate offers, and it gives some leverage to their sellers so that they've got some leverage. Instead of you put it out there, all of a sudden you get an offer right away, and that person only gives you an hour to respond, and it's full price, which is obviously a good offer, but you potentially could be leaving money on the table. So it's a great strategy.
The first time I had ever heard of it, it was so foreign to me that I didn't know if or how it would work within our market. But now, given some of the price points and some of the activity in the different price points in the different property types, I mean, a condo at a certain price range or a single family lakefront home at a certain price range, you almost know where you're going to generate that kind of activity. And one of the things that Ron and I talked about is how, they use that to their advantage to literally control the seller's time. To protect the seller's time, to control their time. They weren't having to struggle or deal with agents that were demanding short response times. They set themselves up so that they were accepting offers at, starting at 10 a.m. on a Monday morning. That way, at Saturday night at 4, you're not dealing with something into the evening when it's hard to reach a seller or hard to reach another party. So it was really a great conversation. It's something we haven't seen much of, but I think it's worth considering.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it works well. It does allow you to go out on a Saturday night and go to church on Sunday morning and not have to worry, if you have, what you have. A deal. Yeah, you're working a deal. And so it does allow you to have a little bit more time. And it also allows the seller to have more time to consider the offers.
And Jeff, I've probably heard you say more than anybody that we'll never leave money on the table. But if you get an offer in that first hour and you've got an hour to accept it, not only is it super stressful, but there's a chance you're leaving money on the table. And the story I told you of our nephew in Texas is probably a great example of how more money can be netted by the seller. But the real win for us as professionals, we're not missing that birthday party on a Saturday night or church on Sunday morning. And it's a win-win for everybody. And so we've been in favor of it for a long time. When we've tried it here, we've been questioned, even accused of doing something weird or not right. And we think that once agents get their head around it, we think it's just a wonderful way to do business, because I really don't know any other professionals who might have to miss church or miss an event on a Friday or Saturday night because they have to work. And that's the position that we're being placed in. So we love it. And when offers are considered, it's definitely between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. on a weekday. And it really just seems to work well for everybody. And I'd be happy to tell the Plano, Texas story if you'd like for me to.
Sure, absolutely. I think it is also a way to gauge activity to see where you stand. It's not something.
Yeah.
It's not something you have to. Once you're in, you can't get out of.
Jeff,
I like that portion of it as well.
It takes the pressure off of, if you're helping the seller pick a price, and that pressure that we all feel when we're choosing a price, you can absolutely say, we're not going to underprice your listing because we're not going to consider any offers. If today's Thursday, let's go Monday or maybe Tuesday. And there's no way we're going to leave your money on the table, because if we've underpriced your listing, we're probably going to have a multiple offer situation, and you're going to get the most money that you can. And I'm not going to bother you over the weekend. In fact, I may even take some quality time this weekend, and we'll touch base Monday. And it works well for everybody.
Right. I thought it was a great conversation. I appreciate you sharing it. So,
Does anybody have any questions on how that works?
Questions or thoughts about that?
I have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yep. Gotcha, Josie.
Okay. Yeah. There are a lot of people that when they find out they're in a multiple offer situation and if they have to wait, I'm afraid they will walk away. What do you think the percentages are of losing those buyers versus holding on to those who are there?
You're ultimately ending up in a multiple offer situation. It's just very chaotic and very stressful. So you're just taking the stress away. And I would hope that as professionals, we would say to our buyers, you're in a hot market. You're probably going to end up in a best and final anyway. So this is just getting us there in a methodical approach. And it creates a level playing field for buyers. And it takes away that, oh my God, I've got to drop what I'm doing and get to the lake and look at a property as fast as I can so I don't miss out on it. And that's the mentality of a lot of buyers. So we don't see that as an issue. I guess there could be some buyers that are going to say, I'm not going to wait on look at it Saturday and make my offer Monday at 4 or 2 or whatever. But I think if they want to buy a piece of real estate at the lake, they have to realize what the market is, and they're going to be in a multiple offer situation and a best and final anyway.
Josie,
Ron, one of the things you.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I was going to say, one of the things, Ron, you mentioned right there is you're setting the buyer's expectations, and we're going to get to that here in a little bit, but that is a huge part of this. Is
Absolutely.
setting the expectations of the buyers and the sellers of the process and what it's going to look like. If people are caught off guard, I feel like, Josie, maybe you have a little bit more of a opportunity for people to get frustrated or whatever the case may be. But if we set those expectations that this is normal, this is something that could happen. There's a good possibility that this could happen. Just be prepared. It's always about expectations, I feel like, at the end of the day.
And
It is.
it's happening. It's
Go ahead,
happening
Ron.
in markets across the country. And agents have some control and maybe have a little bit of the life back, and buyers and sellers have adapted to it. I think once you get your head around it, we don't think there's a downside.
Ron, let me just piggyback. So we had one this weekend that was tied up before the weekend was over, and I wasn't involved, but it happened to be Mel, so I was witnessing this go back and forth and back and forth, and a lot of the ideas I'll share are straight from the interactions with the agents. But in this one specifically, there were 2 or 3 people that were not able to make it down in time to even see it. So
Yep.
Looking at that, and this one, the seller was ecstatic, but to think they could have had even more players, that's
Right.
that's
Exactly.
what drives the thought of maybe there's a better way. So that's what we wanted to start with. You know, how do we encourage more? And that's something we want to explore, and we just appreciate you bringing that to the table.
Jeff, I want to tell my Plano story,
Okay.
Plano, Texas story as quickly as I can. And the bottom line is, when we tell sellers we're not going to leave money on the table, in this scenario, there would have been a lot of money left on the table. Our nephew and his wife were ready to move back to Missouri. They had a little house they bought a couple of years ago. They dialed it up. They're in a hot market. They got it ready on a Friday, made it available for showing Saturday, Sunday, with no offers till Monday at 4. They thought 300 would be a good price. Agent came in, said, let's price it at 315. Monday, at the end of the day, after a very methodical weekend of many, many showings and a listing agent that didn't have to worry about working on a Sunday morning, had 6 offers, the highest of which they just closed on at 337. So they would have gotten an offer of 315 in the first hour, and they would have been thrilled. But because of the approach that's happening across the country now, they got $22,000 more than they thought they could. And it was very methodical. Nobody was under pressure. Nobody was under stress. And Monday afternoon, the offers were presented. And a good agent will say, don't send me an offer on Saturday. I don't want to see it. Don't send it on Sunday. Please get it to me Monday. And then maybe you guys are going to get into presentation of multiple offers. But if you do that and you encourage all agents and you put it right out there for everybody to see, don't submit your offer till 4 or 4:30 or 5, whatever that time is, then you're not going to be accused of shopping it. If you had it on Saturday, and then you're accused of shopping it. So that's what we like to do too. And that is another aspect of dealing with multiple offer situations. But that story put 22 grand in our nephew's pocket that he wouldn't have known he had access to.
Yep, it's a great story. Okay, so you're gonna have more to say, Ron. I know you are, and I want you to, because some of this goes, you know, is where we dove in a little bit deeper. So I appreciate all the feedback. I think it helps all of us. So continuing as a listing agent, what are the options for handling multiple offers? You know, the vast majority of them that we see, that I see, is kind of a highest and best type scenario. Jason, you want to take us through what that looks like?
Sure. So I want to go back a little bit to what even Ron said. Like, so say you already have done this process. That doesn't mean that the process is necessarily over. That doesn't mean on Monday at 12, you take one of those and accept it. You may or you may not. You may be in a spot where then you go back and you say, hey, I want to counter this one, or I want to do a highest and best, or that doesn't mean that you're all of a sudden boxed in and you have to take one of those. So I just clarify that as well.
Yep.
Yeah,
Exactly right.
So highest and best, I think most people are probably aware of how this works, but you get multiple offers. And again, everything you do, you want to make sure that we're educating, that we're communicating with our sellers, but at the end of the day, it's always their choice. And so I think that sometimes I think agents err on the side of ownership, and they're not hearing really what their buyers or sellers are wanting. So make sure first and foremost you do that. So once you get the offers in, then you go back to all the parties involved, if you're doing highest and best, and you do exactly it's similar, but it's not the same. So you go back and you say, hey, you know what? We've gotten 3 offers, or maybe you don't tell them how many offers. You just say we have multiple offers, and we're giving everybody an opportunity to give us their highest and best. You have until 10 a.m. tomorrow to present it, or whatever the seller's needs are, whatever your needs are. And so then it gives everybody an opportunity to present that. Again, the highest and best. So say you got 3 more offers, everybody's got their highest and best. Does that still mean you have to take that? It doesn't. I've seen it. In fact, Ethan was in one. It was a $699, which isn't, that's on the upper limits of our hot market. had multiple offers, did highest and best, and then they went back and actually countered the people and said, hey, if you'll go to this number, we'll accept it. And so that's what they did. So again, just because it's highest and best doesn't necessarily mean that
Right.
that's the last of your negotiating. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So the next type or way is I kind of nicknamed it an auction type, and basically this is what Ron and I had talked about quite a bit, and that's where you would check mark on your listing agreement that you have the ability to disclose offers and you have the ability to disclose terms. So I don't see that, haven't seen that a lot in this market, but if you did that, then you have the ability to literally create a auction type atmosphere within a multiple offer. And again, I think that we will start to see more of that. I don't see a downside of that. I just think that it's something that we're not that familiar with.
I think, Jeff, there's a little bit of a misconception, don't you? I've heard people say, well, I can't do that. And you can't if you didn't check that on the listing box, but
that's right.
It's not illegal to disclose the terms if it's in the best interest of your seller and you've checked that box. So
right.
I always check those boxes because you don't know what's ahead, and if it's going to be in your seller's best interest, I don't want to have to change that.
Right.
I don't have to use it, but I can.
Yeah, I don't know why you would actually necessarily check the box, but we've seen it.
So
Hey, I have a quick question. If you don't check the box and you are in a situation, can you, if the seller approves it, can you then make a listing contract amendment change of status and change that?
Absolutely.
absolutely.
Can I get an answer to Kayla's question on the chat? She said, now what are you doing if you are listing that property on a Monday instead of right before a weekend? Are you waiting a week to review offers, or how are you handling that?
Strategy. That's a strategy question. And I think that, in our market, it probably does have to do with weekends at a certain time. But it's not that as long as it's okay with the seller, that's a strategy that you and the seller arrive at.
I agree.
Does everybody agree? Any other thoughts on that?
I would just, what do you guys, anybody had any experience with that? Ron, have you had experience with that? What, is there something that's too long? Is there something that's too short? I mean, obviously we love the idea of going through the weekend, but what are your thoughts on that?
Since most of us are timing a listing anyway with pictures and all the information we need and Matterport or video or whatever it is that we're doing to drop a new listing, probably you'd have that discussion with the seller. And as Jeff said, it's whatever the strategy that you and the seller feel is the best. And the seller really is, they're in the driver's seat, they're the boss. So when you explain it to them, they'll probably say, I'd like a 3-day viewing period or a 5-day viewing period, and maybe introduce that listing to the market on Thursday or even on Wednesday, and then go Monday for offers so that it can be distributed properly into the weekend. And that's probably the ideal scenario. Our market, because it is a lot of weekend viewing, it is a little trickier than most markets, but it's really just whatever you and the seller agree is the best strategy. And I think 3 to 5 days typically is a reasonable period for our folks to view it, get pre-approved, to do what they need to do, and then be able to present their offer when they need to. But it's a great question. I mean, a Monday, that makes it trickier if you introduce a listing on a Monday or Tuesday, because that's not going to get you into the weekend with a 3 or 5 day viewing period.
Back to what Josie said, you don't want to string it out too long or you will lose people too.
I agree.
Yeah, we agree.
I think
agree.
there is a fine line there for sure.
Definitely.
We think so too.
So I wanted to throw backup contracts in here too. We've only talked about this because we want to make sure that and we're not going to beat this up, but your seller has the option once they have an accepted contract to get another one of those in line, and it'll just put the seller in a great position. A lot of multiple offer situations that we see come through, there's a winner, the rest of them are gone, and it's not it's not a part of the plan to make sure that we encourage that backup. But boy, when you do encourage backups, it puts your seller, and we're talking about as a listing agent, just puts your seller in a really strong position. So when you're in that, when you have that opportunity, you can encourage that and end up with a accepted contract and one behind it, and you can feel a lot better about the number one as well. So
Are we talking about that as buyer's agents too? I couldn't remember if it was.
yeah, we're going to get there. Why don't we go ahead and jump to the next one?
Well,
So we're going to get there. We're still on sellers, but we'll get to
I know we're
buyers.
still on sellers. Are we talking about backup offers specifically from a buyer's standpoint?
I don't think we put that on the slide, but we should.
Okay, we'll just wait.
Yep.
Okay.
So here's kind of some of the pitfalls. You know, it's very hard to keep everybody happy, potentially impossible, but satisfied that everything was handled correctly is not hard. It starts with the initial conversation though, even with the seller. And do you want to expand on setting correct expectations with your sellers early on, Jason?
Well, sure. I mean, we touched on it a little bit, but all of these conversations need to be had early on. It's not after it goes on the market. It's when you're having the initial conversations at your listing conversation, you know, not our listing presentation, but our listing conversation. That's whenever we need to be setting the expectations. And again, and I wouldn't ever guarantee someone multiple offers, but for sure setting the expectation that it's a possibility. And if we do get multiple offers, it doesn't mean that we priced it too low. And we talk a lot about that in that listing conversion class. You know, that's kind of the last part of that conversation is the, hey, what if if we get an offer, if we get multiple offers in that first day, how do you feel about that? The time to have that conversation is not once you get the multiple offers or once you get the offer in the first day, but it's right there before they even sign the listing contract that there's a possibility of that, and we're going to use it to make sure that we don't leave any money on the table. And it also doesn't mean that we priced it incorrect. You know, I would also talk about, especially in this market, is that it doesn't necessarily mean we priced it incorrectly if we don't either. You know, and it really depends, I feel like, a lot on the price points, where the property is, the type of property it is, because we all know that there's sweet spots in this market. Not every price point is getting multiple offers. Not every
No, keep those expectations manageable.
Correct.
You know, a bird in the hand is very, very important as well. You don't want to get into a multiple offer situation where you have two offers and all of a sudden an overconfident seller ends up with nothing. And that can happen. And so that's what we mean. You know, it's a fine line for all of us with it, but that's what we mean by correct expectations.
Your market knowledge and your understanding of the market, your market knowledge will be invaluable to your sellers during this time. They're going to lean on you. Most of them, even though you guys are dealing with this on a daily basis, most of them are not. People don't sell houses every day, and certainly they haven't sold houses for a long time with multiple offers. So letting them know that, hey, I've done this, I've got you, is going to ease their mind. And it's also going to, you know, it's just going to show that you're the professional, which is what you want to do. So
consistent messages to each agent. You know, we need to protect our relationships with all of our other agents and represent our clients the best we can. So what I mean by consistent messages is, you know, as soon as we can, we want to let people know what the rules are. And with direct conversation, for instance, something like, you know, look, multiple offers are a double-edged sword. You know, I love it for my client, But what I don't like about it is somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. So I want to make sure that we're on the same page. I want to make sure that if there's any questions that I can answer, I answer them for you. I want you to know the timelines. I want your client to have the ability to change their offer if they want, or stay pat if they want. I just want everybody to know what what situation we're in. And I want you to know that I'm handling this professionally. And I think if we, have that, I can't have that type of conversation with you via text. I can't do it via email. So, in a multiple offer situation, I think it's really important to provide consistent messages to each agent so everybody knows what the playing field is. Does that make sense? Because by the time I get involved with stuff that have gone wrong, it usually has something to do with communication. Anybody have anything to add with that?
That's a great point. And the next one just kind of goes hand in hand with that. If you guys know that we're here for you guys, if you get in a multiple offer situation and you want us to be on the line, we're always available to be online to present, just so that there's no question. Nobody can say that, hey, you down my client or my offer. We're there to make sure that, we just want to stay above board and make sure that we're treating everybody professionally and ethically.
Yeah. So when I have one in my team, I call Jason because I want that team member to be able to say it was not me. But there's a lot of you that I've been on the line with. It doesn't change the presentation at all. It doesn't, oftentimes I don't say anything other than just introducing ourselves and just being able to go back to that other agent and say, oh, by the way, I had Jason on the line with me when I presented it to the seller, because I want you to know that all offers were presented. The seller had a chance to not only ask me about it, but to ask him about it. It makes delivering the message to the agent that lost to their client a lot. They have a lot of credibility. That just holds a lot of credibility, I think, and make sure you protect that relationship. So we've always encouraged that as an option for everyone, and want you guys to know that it's out there if you ever need it. Especially, it should be mandatory if you're one of them writing the offer. Kaylin is laughing at me, I think, because I got a little excited there.
Represent the buyer.
We want to win, don't we?
I like to win. Not everybody gets to win, though.
Nope.
We're hearing stories of people that have written 4 or 5 offers on different properties, 6 offers on different properties, and they just keep losing out. There are some of these price points at $300,000-$400,000. There is a circle. They're going to houses when they're first on the market, and they're seeing the same agent. So you probably, if you're in one of these, you probably are becoming quite acquainted with the other agents who are representing people at this price point. So it's good, though. There's certainly some strategies.
So last week, Jason, in a class that was about effective communication, Jane was on there, and she was talking about what she does to help position the buyers that she works with. She asks a lot of questions to the listing agent. And that is, the first line in this, on this slide is always ask listing agent about level of interest and what's most important to the sellers. That is so important. We had we had one last week in here in our team that was a asking price offer that was written and submitted to the listing agent. But we didn't go deep, and we didn't ask him if there was other offers, and surprise, surprise, that other agent didn't come back and say, would you like to change your offer? I'm in a multiple offer situation. They just came back and said, nope, you lost, sorry. And it was a really bad surprise. So just a kind of a basic reminder, you're showing a property, your people love it. Don't miss an opportunity to quiz that other agent about what's going on, is this going to be, you know, is this something I need to be concerned about? What's most important to sellers? I just thought it was good in any, it's probably good on every listing, but
Well, if you're not
especially,
having that conversation, I mean, if you're just if you're just emailing an offer in, and it's unbelievable how many times we see offers just submitted by email without a phone call. So, I mean, you can't, first off, you can't find out anything about the listing of what's important to the seller or what terms might be important if you're not calling. But you're also at risk if you just email. Gosh, please do not just email an offer ever. It's bad business. You have a chance of not even, the email could mess up. It doesn't go through. They may not see it. They may not see it before they're done. You know, there's just lots of things that can go wrong. So make sure you're emailing it, you're texting, you're calling. You want to make sure that
get specific with your questions.
real specific.
That listing agent, especially if you're in a hot price point, property type area, you can see where that activity is at. You need to get really specific.
And that's a great point. Even if you're not in a multiple offer situation, like all of this that we're talking about right now, those are just good strategies in general. Even if it's been on the market for 300 days, it's not a bad idea to call the listing agent and find out details about the seller and their interests.
So I had most of you guys know I'm pretty out of practice. I don't get in front of the buyers as often as I should anymore. And a year or two ago, I had a personal experience. We had a friend that brought their kids in, and these weren't kids. They were 35-year-old couple, and they were going to buy a condo. And so this condo pops up on the market, and it's perfect for them. And we go out there, mom and dad and the couple that was buying it is there, and they're loving it. And I had asked the listing agent about the interest. I knew what was coming. The price and the condition and everything was right. And this was not in the time where we were seeing this, like, the craziness like we're seeing today. But this particular one, the agent was totally clear with me. And she said, there's going to be multiple offers. I've had this many showings. I've got one offer being sent to me right now. This is going to be it. So we're sitting there and they're discussing their offer. And so I'm hearing this go and I'm thinking, boy, you've got to do something. And I said, look, there's a lot of interest. Here is the one thing that I don't want to happen. We have a long-standing relationship, and the last thing I want to happen is for you to come back to me and tell me, man, I would have paid more. Gosh, I wish you would have told me, because we might not have the chance to do that. So whatever I want you to put your best foot forward and then some, so that if we do lose, we're not upset. And I can't remember exactly how it went, but that's how it went. And that's similar. And I think we have to get outside of our comfort level sometimes when coaching them about their offer, or need to increase their offer. If we've got an offer and then we find out you've got this long to change your offer.
I love, Jeff, since you've taught on that several times, and I think it's one of the best scripts that we have, especially in our market today. Don't come back tomorrow and tell me that you wish you would have offered more. I can't tell you what to offer. A lot of times our buyers, they want us to say, well, what should I offer? You don't have a crystal ball. That's a dangerous game to play. And if it's not one that I would do, I wouldn't tell somebody what they should offer. Should I offer full price? Should I offer more? It's exactly what you said in your example right there, Jeff. Just don't come back tomorrow and tell me, put your best foot forward, and don't come back tomorrow and tell me you wish you'd offered more. This is the time to throw out what you're comfortable throwing out. It's crazy.
Nothing gets that done better than stories and personal experiences. So when you're with one, you can at least tell the story of the people you were with that missed out on 2 or 3. and that gets it across best. The other thing with stories and personal experiences, think about it from another standpoint. And Patty is on here, and she has a great one, like years ago. Patty, remember the video?
Yeah.
If you want to
Yes, I
comment on it.
do. I was not involved in the transaction, but it was the daughter of someone I know, and she and her family had lost out on a couple of multiple offer situations, and a house came on the market that they really didn't want to lose. And they had just gotten home from a Cardinals game. They were like barefoot and had on Cardinals apparel and caps, and their family just sat on the sofa and did about a 1-minute video about why they really wanted that house. It was darling. It was just an irresistible video. And even though they were again in a multiple offer situation and it was close, the seller chose them, their contract, because of that video.
So here's the deal. We played that thing in a meeting. And it was great then, and I wish I had it now. But today in our meeting, in our team meeting, Megan had one that she was a listing agent on, and she was telling us about it. And the agent that was representing the folks who ultimately won, they didn't do a video, but they did a letter.
Yeah.
And she said that letter, when she presented their offer with the letter, she said, in her words, she said, it got him. And I said, it got him. And she goes, it was just, they just really related to that buyer differently than all the other contracts. And it can make a difference. I think that it's another step. It's something that some people are willing to do and some aren't. But I don't see it. I mean, I'm sure that it's more often than I think, but I think it's worth talking about and remembering. It can put you in a different position, I think.
Jeff, Ryan Schaffner had the listing on one, and they had multiple offers. This actually wasn't during, this was probably 6 months ago. And it was a sweet old lady that was selling her house, and it wasn't a super expensive house. Somebody who wrote a letter was $17,000 or $18,000 cheaper than the next. And she, I mean, like, she almost took it. Like, Ryan kind of was like, I mean, she was like, what? She was seriously considering it. I mean, it was like a 5% difference, if I remember correctly. And so
to your point though, it might not win. It might not, they might not sign it and accept it, but if it could just make the difference between that being the contract that they counter.
Yep.
That it can sure help. It's worth considering that for sure.
A lot of times we focus so much on price, we forget about the other things. We want to make sure as well when you're in a multiple offer, and really anytime, is there's lots of other things. There's lots of other terms that are important, whether it's the earnest money. We were in such a stalled market for so long that this really low earnest money, 1% or less than 1% became the norm, which, I mean, I've been countering, or we've been coaching our agents to counter the earnest money. Make sure they get some skin in the game. That's an important piece. It keeps people from jumping ship. It makes sure that they're serious. Timing may be more important to the seller as opposed to money. Maybe they need 60 days to move. Maybe it's they want a really short window. Again, you won't know that if you're not having those conversations. Maybe they're worried about an appraisal, and you've got an appraisal issue. You've got it contingent upon appraisal. All of those things. Maybe it's inspections. There's all of those contingencies. All of those things are things to consider, and so make sure you're asking the right questions. Make sure you're making it as clean as possible if they really want it. Up to what the buyer is comfortable with. You don't ever want to compromise your buyer. You don't ever want to put them in a situation that could harm them or put them in a compromised situation. So be having those conversations with your buyers. But if there's something that they're comfortable with, man, you would hate to lose out because of one of those other contingencies.
So just to add to that, I wish that it just makes me think about, that first line, asking what's most important to the sellers. If you're genuinely caring agent and you know how that is going to, how you can create a contract, or at least discuss those terms with the buyer that you're representing, just asking those questions to the listing agent may put you in a better position. The bottom line is, when you're representing a buyer and you get into multiple offer situation, you don't have control. And so it's interesting how you can see agents that use their concerns rather than the buyer's concerns, and how that doesn't work often. In this deal that Mel had this weekend that I was close to, one of the offers that did not make it, the agent actually said to this other agent actually changed their offer between the time it was initially presented and everybody knew that there was multiple offers to the time that the seller looked at those offers. They increased it. But the agent said, I was really worried about them, and so we did not take their contingency out. They felt like they were going to be okay, but I was just really scared for them, so I went ahead and left that contingency in. Well, it didn't work out for them, and I know it wasn't, intended as a negative, but it causes me to wonder what the communication was on the other end. So you have to be kind of really careful in those situations. If the buyers aren't concerned, you got to be careful that it's not your concern. It's a fine line.
Yep. Hey, the other thing that's not on here, just going back to the backup from the buyer's side, backups can be a great thing for your buyers too. You can continue, you get in the backup spot, and what happens is you can continue to look for homes. That doesn't mean that if you find a home, you can't immediately then cancel your backup contract. You have that right to do that. If you're in a backup position, you can cancel that contract at any time. But what that allows you to do is then what we're seeing is people get so beat up on price, the buyers get so beat up on price that they get frustrated, they're at top dollar, then something happens in inspections, there's a greater chance of, the deal not coming together, the deal falling through. And so if you're already in a backup position and they're accepted, it doesn't get to go back on the market and get in multiple offers again. Your buyer is already in that second seat. So don't forget about that as well.
Hey, this is a good conversation, Jason. Do you have to disclose a backup?
Yes.
Did
you hear me, Jason?
Oh, that was directed to me. Yes.
Yeah, I said, do you have to disclose a backup offer?
What do you mean, do you have to disclose?
So you've got an offer. You've got an accepted offer, and another offer comes in, and you accept it as a backup with the seller. You're representing the seller. Do you have to disclose that to the first offer?
No, I don't think you legally have to disclose it.
Right. You don't. And we've had, it's a very interesting situation, but we've had a lot of those that most of the time they are disclosed, but sometimes for certain reasons they're not. So that's interesting. That puts an interesting spin on it too.
Yep. A lot of times buyers aren't willing to go into backup because they don't want to wait. But again, just remind them that you can be in a backup and still continue to look. That doesn't mean you have to wait. You find something, you cancel it.
Any questions or thoughts about representing a buyer? So how many people have dealt with escalation clauses? How many people never want to deal with another escalation clause contingency
horrible.
again? No, I'm just kidding. We have seen what?
They suck.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It's so weird. I mean, I've never seen as much of it as I have in the last month or so. And the reason we put it on here is because I think it's perceived as a good thing. I'm not sure that sellers, you know, with buyers, I think they perceive it as an advantage. I'm not sure that sellers perceive it as an advantage. I'm not sure agents feel comfortable with the presentation of escalation clauses because we have not, one that I've been involved with, I've never seen an agent inside the company here that has to include an escalation clause because their buyer wanted them to. I've never seen them win. And we've had several of them in our team. We've had it on both sides where we had a listing that we were representing, and one of the other agents had an escalation clause in their contract, and our seller didn't perceive it as an advantage. We've had buyers, Jill had one a couple weeks ago where the buyer's like, no, this is what I want you to do. And the other agent was really nervous about it. And long story short, he didn't win either. But it doesn't mean they're not legal. It doesn't mean you're not going to have to deal with them. We actually called the hotline, and what you see on your screen right now is the hotline's response. And it's hard to read, and you can dig into it later. But you know, I'll just say that they weren't. Our MAR hotline wasn't real favorable. That's why they haven't written our own form. They've actually they've had some conversation about it, and they have not written us. This one came from Columbus, Ohio, an agent that worked with one of our agents and actually gave the language to them. So you can kind of read when we get to the next page, you can read the actual language from Columbus, Ohio, escalation clause. But this was our response. That was our response from our hotlines, from our MAR hotline. And part of the reason was an escalation clause has an amount you're going to escalate your offer by, and let's just say it's $1,000. So I'm willing to go $1,000 over any other offers that you get, Mr. Seller. And then it has a cap on it up to $400,000. Well, why wouldn't you offer me $400,000 if you're going to do that? So it's a very strange deal, but I think it's very common in other markets. And so we're starting to see it more and more. We just wanted to talk about it today. So Kaylin, go on to the next one. So this is that addendum that was given to Susan, and she shared it with me. I just wanted to kind of put it in this class, and you can see that it talks about premises, the offer, and then what terms. If seller prior to this offer during the acceptance period of this offer receives any other bona fide offers, purchase price equal to or greater than buyer's office, purchase price of this offer shall automatically increase by blank more than the highest third-party offer. And then it talks about the purchase price under this offer shall in no event exceed blank, which is the maximum amount of offer as escalated. And then it talks about what it takes to get it done. To complete the escalation of this purchase price, seller shall submit a counter offer signed by the seller with the escalated purchase price. With I think I can't see the picture on here. I lost that. Let's see if I can. I don't know if I'm reading that right.
Which one?
Signed by the seller with the escalated purchase price, yeah. And then seller shall attach to the counteroffer all pages relevant to the purchase price and the signature page of any third-party offer used by the seller. So, I mean, they have proof. And then once the parties are in contract, the escalation provisions are terminated and will have no further legal effect. And we can go back to this in a minute, but go ahead and click to the next one, and I'll show you the next side. This was the instructions page that was attached to that escalation addendum. And it was just an instruction page from the board, their board, and I took out their name. It was actually a Columbus. But It was, what the first paragraph was regarding in the second paragraph. And it was, and Vicky just said touchy issue in a multiple offer situation right now where the other offer is a client of, let's see, I didn't see that. Let's see. Client of the listing agent. I guess we just have to have faith that the agent will not accept any deals from the seller, such as lowering commission, since they would have both sides. Those are concerns that cause bad blood, Vicky, and that's what we don't want to happen on our side. That's why we suggest a witness. You're never supposed to allow commission to do that. So anybody want to add anything on that? I just wanted to share this document because I don't know how many people have seen or dealt with escalation clauses, but we are sure hearing and seeing of it a lot. I personally don't hold them in high regard because I don't think they work. That's just based on the amount of them we've seen and how they're perceived, I think. Any other opinions on that, thoughts on that?
Will you share those documents with us?
Yeah, that's why I put them in here, Patty, so when they're sent out, you can grab them.
I only had it happen once. I was representing the seller, and it surprised me, and it went to someone else, not the one with the escalation clause. So it doesn't happen that often, but it's good to have these guides.
Yeah, it is. So Jill's buyer, just to share another story, Jill's buyer that she was working with, actually demanded, and she called the other agent and talked to the other agent about it, who, by the way, is a very good agent within our market, not within our company, but within our market. Very knowledgeable person, happened to be not familiar with them, did not feel comfortable with it, and so Jill tried to convey this to the buyer, and he pretty much demanded, and she was representing him, so she put it in there, and you gotta wonder how that was conveyed to the seller, because he didn't win. And so it's just really interesting, and I guess it's really prevalent in other markets. I don't, I have very limited experience, but I bet I've seen it a half dozen times in the last 2 weeks.
Wow.
I wonder if you had two of them in the same offer, would it just go to what their maximum amount was? And I mean, and you're supposed to put you're supposed to attach the highest offer. So if you've got two of them that are competing, I mean, how does that work? That seems.
So I don't know. So Mel called me this weekend on hers, because one of her offers, she had 4 or 5 offers on this listing, and she called me and she said, how do I handle this thing? And I said, what do you mean? What thing? And she said, well, one of the offers has an escalation clause in it, and what do I have to do with that? And I said, well, what does the seller want to do? You presented them all to the seller, right? And she said, yes. And I said, well, what do they want to do? And she said, well, I'm just wondering if there's anything we have to do with it. And I said, no, regardless of the escalation clause that's in the contract, you counter the contract that you want the way you want. The seller's in total control. But it was interesting, we don't, we're just not that familiar with them. So my opinion just in brainstorming would be, if you have 2, it doesn't matter. What are the terms and the conditions of the best one? And then you counter the way you want. As the attorney for the hotline said to me, why would I not counter at their highest price if I was a seller? Why do I have to go buy the escalation of $1,000 or whatever the number is over my highest other bid? Or even tell them what my highest other bid is.
Right.
So, I mean, it's a lot of questions.
Hey, can I jump in here for a second?
Please.
So do you think that, because I've seen these escalation clauses as well, and within our office, and and I know I haven't earned the right to even talk on this thing, so thanks for inviting me to this.
Yeah.
And so do you think that most of them are just uneducated when it comes to what escalation clauses are, like we're talking about? So they'll put in an escalation clause and then they won't even waive the appraisal contingency. And so what good does that even do? So I think that there's a lot more to this.
Totally.
A lot of times they won't come up with or what has happened with us here in our office. They won't set a cap. So like Jason, what you're saying is that hey, what happens if you have 2 offers coming in with 2 escalation clauses without caps on them? Which one is the highest and best? Because there has to be a cap, in my opinion. And without that, they'll just continue to go on and it'll waste everybody's time.
Mm-hmm. That's a good point.
No, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think it's just so new to us.
Yeah. And maybe in 2 years they'll be normal, but right now I would can you use one? You could. I would just be careful because the way they're perceived, they haven't seemed to get the desired effect. So just use them. I would educate your buyers that are really wanting to do that. I would give them some live examples. So
Susan had another one that she lost out on because the buyer wanted it, and the buyer almost presented it as though to Susan it was very prevalent in their market, and the buyer felt like this was their security not to lose. And Susan tried her best to talk to the buyer about perception, because she did the same thing after talking to the listing agent. She didn't feel like the listing agent was comfortable enough to present it in a manner where it was going to be an advantage to the buyer, and consequently the buyer didn't get the ability to counter it again. They weren't approached with the opportunity to do anything. They lost out. So it's a different deal.
This would be a situation, I think, where a letter or a video might make a difference to a seller.
mm-hmm.
When they know they have that escalation clause, it might not be the most attractive buyer.
If you paired it with
agree.
that, you mean?
Yeah.
I think that's a great idea. And just like Andy said, you tie that with the rest of the terms of the contract at the same, so that it's all encompassing.
That would certainly personalize the escalation clause and take the edge off of it.
Yeah. I've not seen that. In fact, I've not seen many these days that have letters or videos tied to them. And I think it might be a way to differentiate our offers, win more of them.
Yep.
I've never had luck with adding a special video or special letter. It's never done anything for my sellers.
In multiple offers?
No, not usually, no.
I had one this weekend that the seller read the letter, and I can't say that it made her decide, but it definitely made her feel good about her decision about that buyer in a nerve-wracking situation.
You didn't know it, but I called you out on that earlier.
Oh, sorry, I'm working.
No, no, I told the story where you said it got them.
Oh yeah, no, it did. She wasn't, of course, like, well, I'm going to take that right away, but she read it and she was like, oh, geez.
Right. If it made go ahead, Jason, sorry.
I didn't say anything.
Oh.
I would, Meg, I think that's a great point. I think too many times as agents, the sellers and buyers get pitted, and this isn't necessarily for multiple offers. I think we will do ourselves and our clients a huge favor by making sure that we don't pit the buyer and seller against each other. Like even in the offer stage, doing everything we can to make sure that the seller understands that the buyer loves your home. You know, they're just, you know, this is their, maybe they're lowballing them. Like we just put a big one together where it started really far apart, but the whole time I was just making sure that the seller understood that, man, these people love this home. They think you did a fantastic job. You know, they're just worried about resale. They're worried about, overpaying for it. And it kept the conversation going as opposed to, can't believe they lowballed me, I'm pissed.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I mean, we always try and say that as realtors, we don't want to draw all our emotions into transactions, because I do think that does help a lot of create disaster and just more drama in a lot of situations. But I do think it helps as far as an emotional standpoint for a buyer and seller from the get-go. Yes, you're helping the seller feel like, wow, this buyer really is a good person, and it doesn't matter if they're lowballing me. It's okay. I want to work with them because it was very nice of them to write me this letter.
Yep. Awesome.
Well, guys, I think we're almost out of time, but I think this is, I hope that you guys all win more of your multiple offer situations. I hope you have smoother deals, and even those agents that represent parties that don't win can feel good about the whole deal. It's something we're going to deal with for a while, because our inventory is not going to, it's not going to change overnight. So I don't think this is going away. And I think it's good conversation. So I appreciate everybody coming on.
Man, it's good to see everybody.
Thank you, guys. Have a great rest of your day.
Hey, we are just FYI, we're going to do some of these live here in a couple of weeks. You want to just tell them that, Jeff? We're going to do like one Zoom, one live a week. So we will get to see you guys in person, and we'll get to hug you and squeeze you.
Hey, we love Zoom, and it's really cool,
awesome.
but you can't have the same interaction